Picture this for a moment. You are at a family gathering. The food is good, the room is warm, and the people around you are genuinely glad you are there. Somebody leans over, maybe a cousin, maybe your own grown child, and asks the question that always finds you once you stop working. So, how did retirement turn out? Were you able to save enough? And you being honest, being a little proud after all those years of doing the right thing, you smile and you say, you know what? We ended up right around $1 million. It feels like nothing. It feels like sharing a happy fact at a happy table. But in that one sentence, something just changed, and you will not feel it for weeks or even months. Because the people in that room did not hear what you meant. You meant, after a lifetime of careful saving, we finally reached a number that gives us a little peace. What they heard was something completely different. What they heard was, this person is rich. This person is set. This person has unlimited room. And from now on, when money gets tight in this family, this is the person we call. That is the part nobody explains to you before you retire. We talk about how much to save. We talk about when to claim Social Security. We talk about the markets. But almost nobody warns you about what happens the day your number stops being a secret. Because the truth is, telling people you retired with $1 million can quietly cost you far more than a bad year in the stock market ever could. And the reason it costs you so much is not what you think. It is not just the awkward dinners. It is not just the favors. There is a second cost hiding underneath all of it. A cost the people asking you for money will never see. And it has the letters IRS written all over it. That is exactly what we are going to walk through today, step by step. Now, before we go on, let me say this clearly. Maybe you do not have $1 million. Maybe you have 300,000. Maybe you have 2 million. It honestly does not matter. The exact number is not the point. The moment anyone in your life learns roughly how much you have, the very same thing begins to happen, just at a different scale. So whether you are already retired, or you are 5 years away, or you are simply the kind of person who likes to understand the trap before you step in it, this video is for you. Stay with me, because by the end you are going to see your own money and your own family in a very different light. And before we go any further, one important note. I am not a lawyer, I am not a CPA, and I am not your personal financial advisor. Everything covered here is for educational purposes only. My goal is to help you ask better questions and walk into these decisions with your eyes open. For your specific situation, always consult a qualified professional. Now let us get into it. Reason number 1, the word million rewrites how everyone sees you instantly. Here is something most people never stop to think about. The word million is not just a number, it is a feeling. We have built up that word for a lifetime. Self-made millionaire. The millionaire next door. If I could just hit $1 million. We use it as the finish line, the symbol of having made it. So when you say the word out loud about yourself, you are not handing people a fact. You are handing them a story. And the story they tell themselves is, this person has won the game. What they do not picture is the truth. They do not picture a carefully built portfolio that has to last 25 or 30 years. They do not picture a safe withdrawal rate or taxes or inflation slowly eating your buying power or the cost of healthcare climbing every single year. They do not picture the fact that once you are no longer working, it is very, very hard to ever replace money that gets spent. None of that. They just hear a big round magic word and they quietly move you into a new category in their mind. And it is not just strangers, it is the people who love you most, your grown children, your brothers and sisters, your closest friends. They are not bad people, they are not scheming, but the human mind compares. The moment they know your number, they start measuring their own life against it without even realizing they are doing it. Think about what the average actually looks like. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the median retirement account balance for households near retirement age sits well below $1 million. So when you walk into a room with $1 million, you are not just a little ahead. In their eyes, you have something they consider enormous and bottomless. To them, your million looks like a cushion with no end. To you, it is a finite engine that has to run for the rest of your life. Think about how the word travels. You say it once quietly to one person you trust, but that person carries it, not out of malice, just out of being human. Maybe they mention it to a sibling. Did you know mom and dad are sitting on about $1 million? Maybe it comes up at another dinner you are not even at. And suddenly, a number you said one time in one moment is living in the minds of a dozen people, each of them quietly recalculating what you can do for them. You cannot unring that bell. Once the number is out, it is out for good, and it keeps working against you in rooms you will never sit in. And here is the cruel little twist. The more responsible you were, the worse this gets. The careful savers. The planners, the ones who skipped the new car and packed the lunch and maxed out the retirement account for 30 years. Those are exactly the people who end up with a number worth talking about. So the reward for a lifetime of discipline is that you become the most interesting wallet in the family. The very thing you should be proud of becomes the thing that paints a target on your back. Nobody warns you about that. They tell you to save. They never tell you what to do once you have. That gap in perception is where all the trouble begins. Reason number 2, the day your family learns your number, you quietly become the bank. Let me tell you about a couple. We will call them Robert and Linda. They retired in their early 60s with a little over $1 million spread across their traditional IRA and 401k, with Social Security still coming down the road. They had done everything right. They worked hard. They saved. They were proud. And honestly, they had every reason to be. And then they did the most natural thing in the world. At a family gathering, someone asked how it all worked out, and Robert, being honest, said, "Yeah, we ended up right around $1 million." From his side of the table, he was just answering a question. But from that moment on, the roles in that family quietly shifted. Their children especially started to see them differently, not as mom and dad anymore, as the solution, as the answer to a lot of financial problems that used to feel like nobody's to solve. It started small in a way that did not feel small. One of their adult children was looking at buying a house and wanted help with a down payment, 6 figures. Now here is the dangerous part. In that child's mind, this was not a crazy request anymore. Because, well, it is only a small percentage of what you have. You can swing it. That is exactly how people think once they know your number. They do not weigh the request against your monthly income, or your plan, or your future. They weigh it against your total pile. And it is rarely just the down payment. Once that door is open, it widens. A grandchild needs help with college, and of course you want to help with that. A child wants to start a business and just needs a little to get going. Someone's car finally gives out and they cannot get to work without a replacement. Each of these is a real, understandable need. That is what makes it so hard. You are not being asked to fund something foolish. You are being asked again and again to be the safety net that your number told everyone you could be. And every time you say yes, you quietly confirm it. You teach the people you love that when the ground shakes, you are the floor. And against $1 million, almost any single ask looks small. So let me ask you something right now, and I really want you to answer honestly in your own head. Has anyone in your life ever assumed you could just cover something just because they think you have it? If yes, type the word yes in the comments. If that has never happened to you, type no. I read these, and the answers always tell a story all on their own. Because here is what Robert and Linda learned the hard way. Once you are seen as the family bank, the requests do not stop. They become normal. They become expected. And the saddest part is, most of the time it is not malicious at all. The people asking genuinely love you. They simply assume because the number told them to. Reason number 3. Saying no starts to feel selfish, and that guilt does the real damage. This is the part that catches people most completely. When your family believes you have plenty, the word no stops feeling like a reasonable boundary and starts feeling like an act of cruelty. You begin arguing with yourself. Well, we do have enough, do we not? Should we not step in? They are struggling. We are technically millionaires. Are we being greedy if we say no to our own child? That guilt is powerful, and it does not stay in your head. It walks straight into your bank account. It turns into spending that has nothing to do with your actual plan. You were not budgeting for it. Your withdrawal strategy did not account for it. But the guilt makes it feel necessary, even noble. Over time, that guilt-driven spending does 2 very damaging things at once. First, it chips away at the structure that was designed to fund the rest of your life. Every dollar that leaves early, especially in those first years of retirement, is a dollar that can never compound, never recover, never be there when you actually need it for your own care later on. This is sometimes called sequence of returns risk, and financial researchers have documented how withdrawals taken in the early years of retirement are far more damaging than the same withdrawals taken later because those early dollars lose their compounding potential permanently. Second, and this one is quieter but just as real, it changes the relationship itself. It introduces a low hum of resentment on both sides. You start to feel used, even if you would never say it out loud, and they start to expect, even if they would never admit it. The love is still there, but now there is a layer of money sitting on top of it that was never there before. And money, once it gets into a relationship, is very hard to ever take back out. There is a deeper version of this guilt that catches the kindest people of all. You look at your own life, comfortable, careful, secure, and then you look at someone you love who is struggling, and a quiet voice starts whispering. What kind of person sits on all of that while their own child or their own sibling goes without? It feels almost shameful to have enough when someone close to you does not. And that feeling is so strong that it can override every plan, every spreadsheet, every careful calculation you ever made. You stop thinking like a retiree protecting a 30-year runway. You start thinking like a parent who cannot stand to watch their child hurt. That instinct is beautiful. It is also one of the most financially dangerous instincts in retirement because it does not stop. There is always another need, another rough patch, another reason to feel like the bad person for keeping what you have. Protecting your own security has to become a decision you make on purpose because the guilt will never make it for you. Reason number 4, the small favors bleed you faster than any market crash. You might be thinking, well, I would never hand over a 6-figure down payment, so I am safe. But here's the trap. The big dramatic request is rarely what does the damage. It is the small ones, the ones that feel completely reasonable in the moment. $5,000 here to help a child through a rough patch, $8,000 there so they do not miss a good opportunity. Picking up the cost of the family vacation because, well, you are retired now, you can swing it. Each one of those feels tiny on its own. It feels kind. It feels like a one-time exception. And saying no to any single one of them feels almost mean. But here is what those small yes decisions actually do over time. The 4% withdrawal guideline, which as I mentioned earlier is a widely used benchmark in retirement planning, suggests that on a $1 million portfolio, you can responsibly withdraw around $40,000 per year and have a strong statistical probability of your savings lasting through a 30-year retirement. That is roughly the annual income your savings generate. That covers your housing, your food, your healthcare, your travel, your real emergencies, and whatever generosity you have specifically planned for. That is the engine. That is what keeps the lights on for the next 3 decades. Now watch what happens when the small favors creep in. Imagine just an additional $10,000 a year flowing out toward family on top of your normal planned withdrawals. On a $1 million portfolio, you have just moved your effective withdrawal rate from 4% up to 5% in a single step. Add the family trip, add an unexpected car repair for a child, add a semester of a grandchild's tuition, and now you are at 6%, even 7%, without ever making one large intentional decision. And here is what the research shows. According to analysis from the Center for Retirement Research at Boston College, increasing withdrawal rates above 4 to 5% significantly increases the probability of outliving your savings, particularly when those elevated withdrawals happen in the early years of retirement. The math is specific and it matters. A dollar given away at age 63 is not just a dollar. Assuming a historically average 7% annual growth rate in a balanced retirement portfolio, $1 at age 63 could grow to approximately $4 by age 83 20 years later. So when you hand away $10,000 today, the future cost to your retirement is closer to $40,000 when you account for what that money would have become. A market crash announces itself. This kind of slow bleed never does, and that is precisely why it is so dangerous. Reason number 5. This is the one nobody explains. Every gift you give is taxed more than once. Here's the question that should make you stop and think. When your child asks for $10,000, where does that money actually come from? Because most retirees do not have large piles of cash sitting around in a checking account. The money is inside a traditional IRA or a 401k, and that changes everything about the true cost of that gift. When you pull money out of a traditional IRA, that withdrawal is classified as ordinary taxable income under IRS rules. This is established in the Internal Revenue Code, specifically under IRC Section 408, which governs traditional IRA distributions. The money was never taxed when it went in because of the pre-tax contribution structure. So when it comes out, the IRS takes its share first. You are not actually giving away $10,000. To get $10,000 into someone else's hands after income tax on the withdrawal, you may need to pull out $11,000, $12,000, or even $13,000, depending on your tax bracket. That is the first tax, and almost nobody sees it coming because a gift feels like it should be free. Let me walk you through the full chain with simple round numbers. Say your child asks for $10,000 and the only meaningful source you have is your traditional IRA. To net $10,000 after income taxes on the withdrawal, you may need to withdraw approximately $13,000. So right away, the true cost of the favor is not $10,000, it is $13,000. Now that $13,000 is added to your other income for the year, your total income rises, and here is where it ripples outward in ways most people never anticipate. Under current Social Security rules, established by the Social Security Amendments of 1983 and refined over subsequent decades, up to 85% of your Social Security benefit can become subject to federal income tax, depending on your combined income. The IRS uses what is called combined income, which is your adjusted gross income plus any non-taxable interest plus half of your Social Security benefit. For single filers in 2024, if combined income exceeds $34,000, up to 85% of Social Security becomes taxable. For married couples filing jointly, that threshold is $44,000. So by pulling extra money from your IRA to help a family member, you may have just made a larger portion of your own Social Security benefit taxable. That is a second tax reaching back to money you thought was already settled. And then there is a third ripple, one that arrives years after everyone has forgotten about the original favor. Medicare uses what is called Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, or IRMAA. IRMAA is governed under the Medicare Modernization Act and administered through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Under IRMAA rules, Medicare looks back at your income from 2 years prior to determine your current premiums for Medicare Part B and Part D. In 2024, standard Medicare Part B premiums start at $174.70 per month. But if your income 2 years ago was higher than the base thresholds, surcharges are added on top of that. For a single filer whose income in a given year exceeded approximately $103,000, the surcharges begin. For married couples filing jointly, the threshold is around $206,000. A large IRA withdrawal today can push you over those thresholds and raise your Medicare premiums 2 full years from now. You will open that notice wondering why your Medicare costs went up, long after everyone has forgotten the favor that caused it. So let us put the whole chain together. That one quiet $10,000 favor was really the $10,000, plus the income tax on the gross withdrawal to net that $10,000, plus the additional Social Security benefit that became taxable because your income rose, plus potentially a higher overall tax bracket on your other income, plus elevated Medicare premiums arriving 2 years down the line. The favor did not cost you $10,000. It cost you the gift, a tax bill on the withdrawal, a tax on Social Security that may not have been been taxable before, and a future Medicare surcharge. All for a gesture that the person receiving the money had no idea carried any of those consequences. Now you may be thinking, what if I give from a Roth IRA instead, or from plain savings in the bank, to avoid the income tax on the withdrawal? And yes, qualified Roth distributions under IRC Section 408A are not subject to income tax, which softens the first hit considerably. But do not let that lead you to believe the gift is free. Every dollar that leaves your accounts, regardless of which account it comes from, is a dollar that is no longer doing its work inside your retirement engine. Cash savings were your liquidity cushion for difficult years. Your Roth IRA is arguably the most valuable account you own in retirement because its growth is entirely tax-free, and its qualified distributions carry no tax liability. Trading that away to solve someone else's financial problem is quietly trading your most protected money for a situation that was never yours to rescue. There is no account type that makes generosity costless in retirement. There is only the question of which portion of your future you are willing to surrender, and whether the person asking you understands that is the real price. Have you ever withdrawn money from an IRA or 401k to help someone you love without thinking about the tax consequences of that withdrawal? Type yes or no in the comments. No judgment here at all. Most people have never been told this clearly even once. That is exactly why this channel exists. Reason number 6. Even your friendships quietly turn into scorekeeping. We have been talking mostly about family, but the same dynamic plays out with friends, and sometimes it catches people completely off guard. Once your friends have a general sense of your financial picture, small things start to shift. The check arrives at dinner, and suddenly everyone is quite comfortable watching you reach for it. A group trip gets planned, and someone says, well, you are retired, you can make it work. Or, you have got that nest egg, you should come. You can afford it. Some friends get too comfortable with your money. Others get quietly uncomfortable with their own. And money, once it is open knowledge in a social circle, introduces a kind of invisible scorekeeping that was never there before. People have described it this way. We used to feel like equals, and now there is this sense that I am the wealthy one in the group, and it is just awkward. Friends might joke about you being the rich one, and then quietly feel put out if you do not pick up the tab or chip in for the trip. Your generosity stops being appreciated and starts being assumed, and resentment can build, not based on your actual situation, but on what they imagine your situation to be. There is a hard truth in all of this. Sometimes protecting a long friendship means protecting it from information it never needed in the first place. People do not need to know your account balance to love you, to support you, or to be part of your life. The number adds nothing to the relationship, and the research on social comparison, going back to psychologist Leon Festinger's foundational work, consistently shows that people evaluate themselves in part through comparison to those around them. A wealth gap, once it becomes visible, changes how people feel about themselves in relation to you, regardless of their intentions. And it works the other way too, in a way that is just as sad. Some friends, once they know, start to pull back quietly. They feel like they cannot keep up. They stop suggesting the dinners and the trips because they assume you are operating on a different level now, and they do not want to feel the distance. So you lose them slowly, not because of anything you did, but because a piece of information changed how they see themselves next to you. A friendship that took 40 years to build can cool off over a single number that added nothing to that friendship and quietly took something irreplaceable away. Reason number 7, the help you give rarely fixes the problem, and you can never get it back. This is the hardest one to say clearly, but it needs to be said. When you step in and rescue someone financially, you feel like you are solving their problem, and sometimes for a moment you are. But very often you are not fixing the problem at all. You are absorbing it. You are taking a struggle that belonged to someone else and quietly transferring it onto your own back, into your own retirement, into your own later years. Because if a grown child is running short every month, writing them a check does not change the underlying math of their financial life. It only delays the day they have to face it, and it can unintentionally train them to expect the next rescue instead of building the skills and habits to solve it themselves. Research in behavioral economics, including work by economists like Richard Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi, has explored how external financial support can reduce the urgency people feel to improve their own financial behaviors. The help feels loving, but it can quietly work against the person you are trying to help. The difficult truth that careful, loving parents struggle to accept is this. Sometimes the most genuinely generous thing you can do is to let someone find their own footing while you remain strong enough to be there if something truly catastrophic ever happens. You cannot be the emergency fund for an entire family and also maintain an emergency fund for yourself. You have to choose, and the people who quietly protect their own savings tend to understand that, even when it aches. And here is what makes this different from almost every other financial mistake. It is one direction only. When you are still working, a costly decision can be corrected with another year of earnings. You can recover. But once you are retired, that recovery path is largely closed. The paycheck is gone. Money given away in your 60s is money you cannot replace in your 80s. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the labor force participation rate for Americans aged 65 to 74 is around 26%, meaning the vast majority of retirees are not earning income that can replenish savings. So every one of these decisions carries more weight in retirement than it would have at any other point in your life. And yet it is precisely the time when the requests arrive hardest, because that is when everyone assumes you finally have it to give. There are people who gave generously from the heart for years, and then their own health changed, or the market turned, or the cost of long-term care arrived, and they found themselves needing help. And the hardest moment is realizing that the money given away with love is simply gone. The people who received it have moved forward with their lives, and they do not carry the memory of those gifts the way the giver does. That is not a criticism. It is simply how memory and money work. Your savings are the only thing in this entire picture that will never forget what you spent. Protect them, not because you are selfish, but because in the end, you may be the only one standing between yourself and needing someone else to rescue you. So, what do the smart ones actually do? What do the retirees who genuinely make their money last do differently? It comes down to 3 quiet habits, and none of them require you to be cold or secretive or dishonest. They simply require you to be intentional. The first habit is financial privacy. Privacy is not lying. It is being deliberate about who actually needs to know your specific numbers and when. Your spouse? Absolutely. Your financial planner and your accountant? Yes. Possibly one deeply trusted person if it is relevant to your estate plan. But your children, your siblings, your friends do not need a dollar figure to love you or to be part of your life. There will be a right time to bring family into financial conversations, particularly as you plan how to pass things along eventually. But that time is almost never at a dinner table, in a casual offhand moment the week you retire. And one piece of this that couples miss entirely. You and your spouse need to agree on the approach together before anyone ever asks, not after, because what happens otherwise is that one of you holds the line carefully, and the other one, caught off guard at a family holiday with everyone watching, says something in the moment to avoid the awkwardness. Now the boundary is broken, and the two of you are quietly in conflict on the drive home. Talk about it now. Decide together what you will say when someone asks. Decide together who is allowed to know specific numbers. And agree that neither of you commits to anything significant in the moment. The answer is always, let us think about it and get back to you. That single phrase is one of the most powerful tools available to you in retirement, because almost nothing in your family truly has to be decided on the spot. The pressure to answer immediately is the pressure that empties retirements. The second habit is setting boundaries early, before expectations have a chance to harden. It is far easier to set the tone at the beginning than to walk it back later, and the language can be entirely gentle. Things like, we have a plan in place with our financial advisor, and we are being careful about what we commit to. Or, we are always glad to help you think through a problem, but we are not in a position to serve as the family safety net. Or, we have structured things carefully so that we do not outlive our resources, which means we cannot always say yes even when we deeply want to. Notice that none of those statements require revealing a single number. They simply redirect the conversation away from what you have and toward what your plan allows. And if the number is already out there, if you mentioned it at a dinner years ago, do not panic. You can still reset the expectations. You can say, when I mentioned we were around $1 million, I think it gave the wrong impression. That money is not extra. It is the only income we will have for the next 30 years, and it has to last every bit of it. Or the simplest version, the one that quietly ends most requests. This money is our paycheck for the rest of our lives. There is no more coming in after this. So if it runs short, the only people it could turn to would be you. And that is the last thing any of us wants. That framing lands consistently because almost no one wants to picture being responsible for their own parents. You are not being harsh. You are simply telling the truth about what the money actually is. The third habit is making decisions based on your plan, not on other people's assumptions. When a request comes in, do not ask yourself, do we have the money? Because against any significant balance, the answer always feels like yes. Instead, ask, is this built into our withdrawal plan? What does saying yes here mean we are saying no to later? And are we genuinely at peace with that trade-off? That single shift from do we have it to is it in the plan is the difference between the retirees who maintain their financial independence and the ones who quietly surrender it, one kind gesture at a time. Let me paint a few clear pictures so this truly lands. Imagine you tell no one the number. A few years into retirement, one of your children goes through a rough patch and asks for help. Because you established your boundaries clearly from the beginning, you are able to say, let us sit down together and think through the smartest way to handle this. You help in a way that fits your plan, on your terms, and the relationship stays warm because it was never built on an assumed pile of money. Now imagine the other version. You mentioned the number at that first dinner. The same child hits the same rough patch, but now the ask is larger, the assumption is louder, and saying no feels almost impossible. You pull from the IRA. The income tax follows. More of your Social Security becomes taxable. And 2 years later, your Medicare premium rises. You did the loving thing, and somehow you ended up poorer, more heavily taxed, and quietly resentful. Same heart, completely different outcome. The only thing that changed was a single sentence spoken years earlier. And here is the one I want you to sit with. Picture yourself 15 years from now. The market has had a couple of difficult years. Healthcare costs are higher than you ever projected, and you find yourself wishing you had every dollar you quietly gave away during those early years when everyone assumed you were comfortably set. The people you helped have moved forward with their lives. They do not carry the memory of those gifts the way you do. But your savings do. Your savings always remember. And one more picture, perhaps the most important of all. Imagine that something happens to you, a health event of the kind that requires real, sustained care. The kind of care that, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the average American who reaches age 65 has nearly a 70% chance of needing at some point in their lifetime. The kind that can cost several $1,000s a month in a nursing facility or several $100s a day for in-home care. If you spent your early retirement quietly redirecting money out the door, that money is no longer standing between you and that worst case. But if you kept your engine intact, if you stayed quiet and protected what you built, then when that day comes, you have what you need to take care of yourself with dignity, on your own terms, without having to ask anyone for anything. That is what the money was always for. Not to impress anyone, not to rescue everyone around you. To make sure that the person who spent a lifetime taking care of others is finally, fully taken care of. When you say nothing, you are not being cold. You are protecting the one person almost everyone else assumes will always be fine. Let me bring it all together. The reason the smart move is to keep your number private is not greed, it is protection. The day your number stops being private, the word million rewrites how everyone sees you. You quietly become the family bank. Saying no starts to feel selfish, and the guilt turns into spending that was never in your plan. The small favors bleed you faster and more quietly than any market crash, pushing your effective withdrawal rate into dangerous territory. And underneath all of it sits the reason almost nobody explains, the one that people asking you for help will never see. Every gift pulled from a traditional retirement account is taxed at the moment of withdrawal, then taxed again as it ripples through your Social Security income calculation and your future Medicare premiums under IRMAA. Your friendships can shift into quiet scorekeeping. And the help you give often absorbs a problem rather than solving it. While the money you give away in your 60s is money you cannot rebuild in your 80s. The way out of all of it is simple, though not always easy. Privacy, early boundaries, and decisions made from your plan instead of from other people's assumptions about what you have. Your simple checklist before you ever say your number out loud. 1. Decide in advance who truly needs to know your specific figures. For most people, that list is very short. 2. Practice 1 or 2 calm boundary phrases now, before you ever need them in the moment, so they come out steady rather than defensive. 3. The next time any financial request comes in, do not ask whether you have the money. Ask whether it is in your plan. 4. Before you ever withdraw a single dollar from a traditional IRA to help someone, stop and ask yourself what that withdrawal does to your taxable income for the year, to the taxable portion of your Social Security benefit, and to your Medicare Part B and Part D premiums 2 years from now under IRMAA. If you are not certain of the answers, those are questions for a qualified tax professional or a certified financial planner before you act, not after. 5. Remember that the retirees who make their savings last are not the ones who talk about what they have. They are the ones who stay quiet, protect the engine, and let it run. If this opened your eyes today, please tap the like button so that more retirees find this conversation before they make this mistake. And if you are not subscribed to Retirement Watch USA yet, subscribe right now, because the next thing the people around you are not warning you about is already on its way. I want you to hear it here first. Take care of yourself, protect what you built, and remember, sometimes the smartest thing you can say about your money is absolutely nothing at all. I will see you in the next video.